special NASCAR preseason event taking place at the LA Coliseum, a new investment for NASCAR at a new stage on the West Coast. They've built this track around this sort of multi-purpose concert venue thing. Super, super small, wide racetrack, which is going to create some really interesting racing scenarios. And especially having these new cars is going to present a really cool challenge for the NASCAR drivers, because they've got this opportunity to check out the new cars before the real season opener in Daytona. You know, the Clash in LA isn't a championship points event. It's not something that's going to have an influence on the rest of their season, but it is going to determine a little bit the sort of running order of the teams, the rivalries, who might be in the championship fight. The signs of that are probably going to become clear at this exhibition event. Also, it's a really big opportunity for NASCAR to capitalise on the cool season they had last year. You know, things like the Bristol dirt track race, really, really cool sort of sporting racing spectacles that NASCAR is looking to create to sort of diversify its portfolio almost. You know, you have these incredible long endurance style 200-mile-an-hour chess match oval races like the Daytona 500. Then you have these more traditional circuits like maybe Watkins Glen or the Daytona Road Course or the Indianapolis Road Course, which present a different challenge to the drivers. Then you're throwing in something like the normal Bristol track, which is a small, more traditional oval built for smaller cars, which brings up its own racing challenges also. Now you have this LA Coliseum track being brought in, which is going to be even smaller than Bristol, really, really wide, almost a sort of, you know, an oval, but like a really shrunken down oval. You know, fitting inside a concert venue. It's not really a big place. You know, the pits are actually not going to be in the infield because there's not enough room. They've really had to get creative with the track design here. So as an exhibition, as a spectacle, as a piece of racing product, I'm really excited for the LA Clash at the Coliseum. That's what they're calling it, the Clash at the Coliseum, for the NASCAR preseason event. And it's not really something we see in other categories to kind of produce this racing spectacle in a non-championship scenario. But I think for NASCAR, it's particularly important this year with their change into the new regulations, giving those new regulation cars a new track, a new format. You know, it's more of a sort of heat and final qualifying format with tournament brackets and duels and that sort of thing. I don't need to get into all the intricacies of it, but it's not really a traditional sort of qualifying 50 cars line up in a big line, driving an oval for 4 hours and, you know, fastest car wins. It's more of a sort of short race structure where you're going to have 8, 12 cars racing against each other, top 2 qualify to the next round, Then the final race will be over an hour, more endurance style, but actually more of a sort of Grand Prix length than a traditional NASCAR 500-mile race. So it's going to be really, really cool to see how that all evolves and whether it can live up to the expectations. You know, it might be that the design of the track really limits the ability of NASCAR to show off the performance of its new cars and that they don't adapt very well. But if that does happen, really then that becomes a test for the drivers where they're going to be faced with that new challenge and they've got to pull time out of a car that isn't in its natural habitat or isn't adapting to the track well. In some ways that's disappointing to see for the engineers, but it also presents that challenge for the drivers of how well can you adapt in that uncertain scenario. Really looking forward to that one, to get a little bit of pre-season insight into the NASCAR cars. I repeat, it's not a championship event, so it doesn't really matter the finishing order, but I think symbolically and also in terms of, like we spoke about with Jonathan last week, in terms of having it in the minds of the team and having a motivation to look positively towards the next year of racing. If you can put in a good performance at this pre-season clash, it's really, really going to motivate the team to think, you know, the signs are there, the opportunity is there. We've shown in this first instance that we can compete at a high level. Let's keep doing it for the rest of the year. I think that's really where teams are going to look to draw motivation out of the event, or maybe it'll show them the opportunities where they need to improve and the opportunities where if you come out of the weekend with a positive result, there's a way to use that for motivation. But also if you come out with a negative result, you can use that for motivation as well. So I think it's really important that the NASCAR teams, you know, use this opportunity in general to provide some sort of platform to build a championship challenge on once the real season gets underway. But it's also really important that they don't overrepresent it. You know, you can afford to make some mistakes and take some risks in this race. A little bit, it is about presenting a cool spectacle for the new fans. The investment for NASCAR in the West Coast. Traditionally, of course, it's a sport that has existed primarily in the southeast of the USA and Texas and the sort of general South. Recently, and you know, it's wrong to say that it stayed there through its whole history. It was, at a time, purely because of its following in that area, you know, the most popular spectator sport in America. So you can't say that it's purely limited to just a small area of the states of some real hardcore fans, because it's not factually accurate. It once was an incredibly popular sport, and I think the move from NASCAR to make these significant investments in infrastructure on the West Coast, looking to get back to those days, looking to get back to being at the top. The NFL at the moment in America is experiencing incredible growth in fan engagement, viewership, gambling, all that kinds of stuff. The NFL is the king at the moment in America, and it's working as a model for these teams, these other sports, to replicate and to try and bring in some of that renewed passion for sport and challenge and competition and gambling, a lot of gambling. NASCAR needs to really get involved in that if it's going to take on the NFL as one of America's biggest sports. It's looking to learn some lessons from what they've been able to achieve in their year-on-year growth throughout the last decade. NASCAR definitely needs some of that. As we see Formula One taking over in America, NASCAR needs its slice of the pie too. So it's going to be really interesting to see the impact of this LA race, how the media coverage is, whether they're able to live up to the expectations. I'll keep you all clued in on that. I'll do my research and get you all the facts. Let you know next week how that all gets underway.